Okay.
And we are live once again on a Thursday night, another edition of the Mattriarchy, my little talk show where I interview people that I find interesting or that I'm trying to butter up. And I'm coming to you live from Scotts Bluff, joined by the Metal, who is on screen with me right now. Say hello, Metal.
Ahoy there.
And we also have not on screen through the vast wieldings of technology. I've got Dan Connor coming to us from the great highways of the state of Nebraska.
That's right. Actually, I'm in South Dakota right now.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You mentioned that. You left rapid.
Yeah. On my way back to Nebraska.
Yes. Now, Dan, you of course are not from Nebraska. You are merely passing through we'll be passing through our state, and you are heading to where?
Yeah. I live in Denver area.
Yeah. And what brought you up to the so far from anything that could remotely be called a city?
I didn't quite get the whole question, but I went to Game Changer in Shattern, Nebraska for a signing yesterday because they did a retail exclusive cover of Ninja Turtles 100 that came out yesterday. Pretty big issue, pretty important, a lot of fun. And it was by Neil Adams. He did the front cover, and so then I did the back cover. And so I went up to the shop for a signing to be released. And then we figured, hey, let's get another shop in on this. And so we went up to the Rapids.
Okay, cool.
Rapids.
As it turns out, I'm going to be in Shattern tomorrow. My sister-in-law is graduating college, and they're having their mid seat term graduation ceremony tomorrow. So I'm going to be up there then.
Cool.
I may have to see if I can talk my family into stopping into Game Changer because we've never been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys should. Yeah, they'll be open tomorrow. I won't be there, but they'll be open tomorrow.
Well, if you were going to drive all the way back to Denver just to drive back to Shattern, that'd be crazy talk.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
So, of course, one of the things I wanted to bring guys on to talk about, and we'll hope if Matt joins us later, we'll get him into the conversation too. But all of us have been involved at various points in webcomics, and I know, of course, Dan, you're not doing a lot webcomic wise these days because you keep yourself very busy with the print matter. But at the same time, that's been a big part of your journey. And I know the Metal, I've not caught up yet with yours, but that's that. But he does come webcomics too, and of course I was just working on mine earlier today. So yeah. So why don't we start with Dan? Tell us a little bit about your history with comics and what got you into the medium.
Yeah. All right. So I was a big fan of Ninja Turtles. And the first comic I ever got was Ninja Turtles, like early November or December 1990. So almost 30 years ago. And then when I got a little older, I started reading comics regularly. I would read Sonic the Hedgehog regularly. That was the first comic I ever read regularly around like 93. And I just started drawing. I've been drawing the whole time. And I had been just drawing, even in kindergarten, like Ninja Turtle rip-off type characters. And they would have like weapons for arms and weird stuff like that. So then when I was in third grade and I started reading more comics regularly, I just started drawing comics. And then in high school, I started doing the comics, probably around when people started uploading stuff to the internet, like the tips and stuff. And then I interned at Canada Express right at the high school, where I lived in San Antonio, Texas. And it just got me where I am today.
Yeah, and that's actually really interesting that you had a chance to intern at Antarctic. How did you end up with that?
early, and I knew that I seen that they were in my calendar. I'd actually already submitted to them, and they had that work on file. So what I did was I called them and I said, hey, you guys need like a janitor or something. And they said they didn't, but they offered internships. So I graduated high school early, so I did that like right away. So then I had kind of a semester. And so then they were like, well, we offer internships. So I went down and I showed them my stuff and then just kind of learned on the job then.
So, what kind of stuff did you end up doing with for Antarctic?
That's when I started writing comics. I applied it stuff on anything from Chapter 7 was a series that I was planning on, and I really have to send it back to some of the others. But it was one I did some flat color stuff. And I mean, just also sometimes it's about drawing things, going to their production meetings, learning about that publishing everything. So yeah, pretty good.
And you started, and that was while you were doing that was the same time you started the Heaven Forbid webcomic, right?
But that was probably even like 5 to 10 years later. That was when I was doing a series called Life Quest. It was the first sequential webcomic that I did, and I did that in like 2002 and 2001 at the earliest. So I think it's 2002 to like 2003, and then I did stuff for the magazine as well. Christian comics that I it was like an anthology I did stuff for. So that was around 2003 that stuff was published the first time.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about Heaven Forbid for people that can't read it, that aren't familiar with it. Is it
like myself?
Yes.
Yeah. So I started Heaven Forbid when I spent a while away from Warner Press, and I went back to them and I got like a paid job. And I was talking to Rod Espinosa that had a suggestion. He did Trade Protest and he worked on one of the Dark Lord Buffy the Vampire Slayer comics, and he's done a lot of comics. So anyway, he said he thought it would be a good idea to have a comic series that was about like church people, like either at church or something like that, just like a humorous one. So, I kind of did some ideas of him, worked on some stuff like that with him, and one of those actually really struck. So then I'd say another year later or so, around 2008, I believe, I revamped it. It might have been 2009, but I think it was 2008. And I revamped it, and I called it Not Getting Religion. And I liked that title, but I knew that wasn't it's kind of wordy. Maybe we work for the newspaper comic, but not really for a comic book. So I heard someone say, Heaven Forbid, rather than like, oh no. I was like, that's the title. And so the first book was subtitled Not Getting Religion.
Right.
And then I did like 3 of those books. And I thought, hey, I'll do a story where one of the characters can check. She was in a 1960s sitcom, like Bewitched, but with a zombie instead of a witch, so she was a zombie. And that just really took off. People started following on a lot. People, or want more, I guess. And so people really responded to it at convention.
Yeah, and so for those of you guys out there in the internet land, just to interrupt Dan for a second, his mic cut out, and the title he was talking about that sprung out of Heaven Forbid was called My Gal the Zombie. So.
Did you say that I cut out?
Yeah, just for a second. I think you may have driven through a dead zone.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them on that highway. I'm fairly familiar with it.
Yeah, no, I know you know it probably more than anybody. So yeah, so I was doing that for Forbid stuff, and then I thought I would have a story where one of the characters was a zombie, and then that's been successful since then. And so I did that as a webcomic for a couple of years, and ultimately my host with GoDaddy messed up, so all of those came down. But I think I had, I don't know, maybe almost 1,000 posts or something for my webcomic.
So that's actually was part of the question I'd had, is because I noticed that the Heaven Forbid stuff wasn't online anymore, and I didn't know if that was that was not intentional then.
No, it was GoDaddy, and it's all messed up, and Every so often they call me and they'll be like, "Hi, what can we help you with? What do you need?" And I'll be like, "I need you to stop calling me because as soon as the contract that I already paid is up, I'm leaving." And they'll say, "Why?" I said, "Because my site went down and you all can't do anything about it." "Oh yeah, you're right. We can't. We're done with that then." So, but yeah, that's why this stuff brought up. I mean, I could just upload it in mass, but I'll figure it out once I redo my website.
Right. Yeah, we actually just recently went through with our website and changed hosting as well, and we're putting up all of the old Forces stories. But we decided rather than just mass upload everything, we're putting it up one storyline every week. So because we have it broken down by chapters, and so once we have a new story that we put, yeah, we're putting it up one chapter every week, so that people that have heard about us for the first time, or we're like, well, this is really cool, but you have 10 years of stories. Where do I start? Oh, you can start Friday. It's a new story coming up on Friday, and then if you want to catch up or whatever, and so so that's something we've done with that. But I know website trouble. We've had to rebuild Forces, I think, 4 times since 2006. Well, 2007 is when we went out on our own. We were with on Comic Genesis our first year.
Yeah, kind of like a TV show weekly and whatnot.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. So, and then
yeah, that's what's so fun. You gotta take Christmas off though. Say no Christmas episode.
Well,
you gotta show it early.
Christmas
episode this week and then take Christmas off.
We often have done that in the past, but this year Christmas is a Wednesday, so it shouldn't affect our update schedule at all.
Yeah.
And all the comics have been drawn for a while, so.
That's the way to do it.
So when you just took Heaven Forbid online first, was there a particular motivation for that, or was it just always part of the plan?
I don't know. Webcomic seems cool. You just do a webcomic and then you make a book, and so it also has the immediacy of people seeing it. I mean, back then I was in San Antonio. And I knew some people there, and I started doing more conventions, but it wasn't like I had this stuff in stores. So when I did the webcomic, it gave an avenue for people to be able to read them, other than people that I wasn't able to meet in person. Because if you're doing indie comics that aren't in others, they don't have they're not with another distributor, or they're not on like Comixology or something.
Right.
The only way people can see them is if you physically hand it to them. And so you have to, when you use the internet, you can get people to see it. Now, kids just take photos on Instagram and post their comics, or on Tumblr or Snapchat or Trap or whatever they are. So I don't know, but they just post the pictures on it. I don't know about all them new social media.
Yeah. It seems weird because I remember when we first got into the webcomic game, and it was 2005 is when we started doing the prep work for Forces. We came up with the idea in 06. I mean, in 03, but we didn't get it online until 06. But we were doing a bunch of the drawing and a bunch of the stuff like that in 2005, and new webcomics still seemed really new and edgy, like a new frontier, and now. I've been at it long enough where I feel like everything's past me, and I have a hard time navigating all of that. So that's one of those things. It's you kind of have to relearn the system a little bit, I guess. So now you've done Malagal the Zombie enough that you've done 3 big trades. Yeah. Did I lose you, Dan?
What was that? Well, I'd say for me, what I did was, when it was good about have a scanner and scan pages in, that was when I was able to start really putting stuff on the internet. And thankfully, my dad had gotten a scanner, and so we still had that. And so that was really helpful. But I learned a lot at AirExpress and over the years about how to format the pages, and the resolution and all that stuff was so important. what type of file format, how to save the files, and so I was able to do all that. But a lot of the My God Zombie stuff was drawn digitally. Some was drawn on paper and scanned in, but actually almost none of Heaven Forbid was drawn on paper, like almost none. That was like all drawn digitally, but with My God Zombie, I started drawing it and scanning it in as well. I wanted to learn more on paper, and people responded well to that. I really tried to draw like Archie comics,
Right?
Santa Carlos, especially. People responded pretty well to My God Zombie. They responded better to it than anything else I did before.
Now, and that's one thing that I thought was really interesting. That I really appreciated from an artistic perspective is the artistic difference between My Gal the Zombie and Heaven Forbid, where you can the character designs traveled across, but at the same time the style was so different. Was there a particular motivator for you to change styles up?
Well, to me, it was an experiment. I wanted to see if I could draw like essentially as on model for Archie style as I could. Not the characters, but of like the poses and the facial structures. And I think people responded to that as well. I've done a couple of illustrations like that for Heaven Forbid that are in the third Heaven Forbid book. But I really just, My God Zombie was a whole new thing. And so I think that maybe if I was upping my game as far as artistically, I think that helped as well.
So just to let everybody know, so I have the first volume of Heaven Forbid right here, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and actually I've got it's signed because I know Dan, right? So
Yeah. Probably a $4 comic or something.
yeah. But here are some illustrations from the Heaven Forbid book, just for comparison, right? It's got a kind of so you can kind of see what I'm talking about with Dan as far as stylistic goes. So that's how he did Heaven Forbid, and then we've got
It's a nice cartoony look going on there.
yes. Oh, it's great. It's great. In fact, and then here I'm going to try to find. I grabbed the second volume of My Gal the Zombie stuff, but I meant to grab the first one. Hang on, I'll be right back.
I'll admit I'm not catching much of what you're saying.
Oh, I'm just showing off your books here.
Oh, thank you.
And this is some of the My Gal the Zombie stuff, and this is from the out of print color extravaganza here. The monster sized, which is an extra. It's like a 10 by 9 format. But it's got a very different aesthetic style to it. And and like I said, the character designs because it has a lot of the same characters. You've got Chelsea, who is one of the main characters in Heaven Forbid, and she is actually the one who becomes the zombie of My Gal the Zombie. Matt Johnson is joining us as well. Hello, Matt. How's it going?
It's going okay. Didn't mean to interrupt. I just knew that we were coming in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're perfectly fine. So we've got just to let you know what's going on here. We've got a little bit of a weird day today because Dan could not join us in a normal way because he is on the road and traveling thither and yon. So occasionally
none of us are really that normal anyway.
Well, when you get webcomickers together, a little weirdness is normal. But Dan has been up in South Dakota doing a signing, and he's on his way back to his stomping grounds in Denver. And so we've got him on the cell phone through Google Hangouts, and so that's broadcasting at the same time. So it's a little it's a little wild. we've been talking a little bit right now about Dan's projects, My Gal the Zombie, Heaven Forbid, and the webcomic process that he used. And of course, he's not updating his webcomic currently because you are doing a lot of, in addition to signings and things, you are actually the color artist for Zero's Journey, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I color Nightmare Before Christmas, Zero's Journey. I do some of the drawing as well.
So, and that keeps you pretty busy. That's because that's a monthly, right?
Monthly. Once in a while there'll be a month that it doesn't come out, but then I'll catch up. Like I think in October, 2 weeks came out the same day, but that might have more to do with Diamond. I never know.
So
Diamond distributors the comic books and stores.
right, and the Diamond is the enemy of many of an indie comic person, I would think. But yeah. Anyhow, so we have. Hang on a second. Somebody said. Okay, that's fine. Sorry. The Metal said something in the chat, in the private chat, that made me laugh.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
It's no slight at you, I can guarantee.
Yo, I appreciate that. I appreciate that for sure.
So yeah, I keep pretty busy, like you said. I keep pretty busy with the coloring, but at the same time, I get around a lot for a lot of lately. This year, I've been doing a lot of conventions and a lot of signings. So, so the one that I had today was kind of last minute. I mean, not last minute. We scheduled it like last week or maybe early this week. I don't know. Sometimes I just went to a convention and been like, hey, can I get a table here? And like, I don't know. I just sometimes just do stuff. It's not necessarily planned. And so that's kind of what happened there. But I wanted to make sure that the convention, the signing was over in time to do the podcast. But I guess I thought that I wouldn't have as much difficulty hearing y'all on the road.
Yeah. Well, we'll try to facilitate that mindfully on all of that. Because this is the first time I've done anything quite like this, so it's a little different. I had a question though in my mind. Give me a second.
For what it's worth, I didn't make out any words. I'm really not hearing you like at all, and I apologize for that.
Okay. That's just me laughing. Okay. I did notice.
Hey, I realize if the call drops, call me back in like 10 minutes from when it drops.
Okay. We might just go ahead and drop you and then call you back in a little bit if that's okay. And because I think maybe, because I'm guessing where you're at, we're going to have a real bad connection for about 15 minutes. I think I may have just lost him.
Yeah, I think the problem just solved itself.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it was. Yeah, he's. Yeah, so that's the situation on that. So, well, Dan, hopefully we'll be back later. I know once you get across that Nebraska border, the signal gets a lot better, and maybe it's the hills. I don't know, but he was about an hour out of.
Well, there's a whole lot. There's a whole lot less of everything out here to block the signal.
Well, yeah. I mean, we have more hills in the west than you guys in the east, but of course, Matt, as we mentioned earlier, in Omaha, with the opposite sides of the state. He could throw a rock into Iowa, and I can walk for a little while and then throw a rock into Wyoming. So,
And I could drive all day and still be in Texas.
that's true. I have done that before. So, joining us, we've got Rebel Comics and Gaming. Larry, hello. Good to have you. Neostar Productions, thank you for showing up. And Lorenzo Stack. Did you send people over from the Needle Mover Society? Well, thank you. Thank you. But we'll go ahead and keep on with conversation about indie comics. And we'll talk everybody's little webcomic projects. And since you were here first, Metal, I'm going to ask you to introduce your comic to everybody here.
Oh, well, here, let me grab a prop. I know I've got him in here. Somewhere. I'm going to talk about it while I'm trying to find it. It's called X Dynamis Chaos. I hear an echo of myself. And it is a battle comic, I guess, would be the best way to call it. I don't know. Action, adventure, madness, all the fun stuff. And it's about a group of freelancers, primarily the main one called The Metal, which is why I use that online handle. And I'm going to grab the best one, the most recent. They take really odd jobs that nobody else will take. Yeah, this is technically episode 4, but it's the 5th chapter of the webcomic because I'm running things very, I don't know, uncouth.
It's non-linear storytelling.
Yes, it jumps back and forth quite a bit because I have 2 different stories that have a lot to do with each other across a very decent span of time. And one of them's called The Hymn of Valor, and I do that every 4th chapter. So after 3 chapters of X Dynamis Chaos, I do a chapter of A Hymn of Valor. I've got another one planned 2 chapters from now. And it's, I don't know, I have a very interesting way of doing my storytelling.
You're the complete job. You do all the art, you do all of the writing.
Oh, everything. Writing, art, pencil, inking, coloring, lettering, everything from start to finish, I do it. And I like this one specifically. So in the last completed chapter, they take a break from doing weird paranormal jobs every so often because the main character of The Metal is an asshole. And he likes to fight, which is the throwback to when I was in high school. I used to sneak out at night to do underground fighting. And he holds this
you're not
tournament.
supposed to talk about that. That's the first rule.
Well, we weren't really the same type of fight club, but nobody did talk about it until years later. So I base this in a real mall because I really just don't care. It's a public place. There's nothing they can do about it. And it was really weird because I had to introduce a character into the story that takes place, like the character used to be part of the group in the past. And I had to basically bring in their entire short backstory as fast as possible without burdening the reader. And I came up with this cool little method of splitting the page in half for each page that worked in separately 2 different ways in both the page-by-page webcomic format and in the printed format. So in the print version, you can kind of just read across the action and the exposition. And I kind of color-coded it so you knew which was which as well. And I like to do fun, interesting, wacky things that maybe the average person wouldn't consider doing with the storytelling.
I love that visually. I like it when people with the comics conventions and try to make things work different ways, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In fact, Dan actually did that some with his the second, heaven forbid, there's some webcomics that have decorative arrows that go around to panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4, kind of stuff. Trying to change that up a little bit, and sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. I know, I don't know if you read Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini's Black Ops 2. I mean, it's getting filled. I got mine last week, and with that, it's a flip book. So you read the first half of the thing, and it's one story, and then you flip the book over and you read the second story.
Oh, okay.
They meet on the same.
Yeah, I've seen those before.
Yeah. And so it's 2 stories that have the same ending, and so that's fun. And so I think
whatever it needs to be obvious. Like
Mhm.
arrows are fine, I guess, but the reader needs to be able to pick up what's going on without you telling them what's going on, since it's
I
a
agree.
visual medium.
I think
Yeah.
so. That's actually one of the things that's sort of a very routine thing uh, with we've talked about lettering a lot on my show because it's something that I do the lettering for our comics. Think about lettering, and lettering is one of those things it feels intuitive, but it's also not as intuitive as people who don't don't realize, right? When you
Yeah.
actually do, oh man, you got to think it through, and then you read the page back, and it's like, oh man, I thought I did something that worked, and I was very, very wrong. Hope I kept the
Yeah,
laser
sometimes I
line,
feel like I'm tight on space.
Mhm.
I do think
Yeah.
about where to put letters when I'm drawing, but sometimes it's like, man, I didn't think that as through. Like maybe I should have left a little bit more space than I gave myself, and everything just seems more cramped than it needs to be.
Well, and that's one of the things I've really had to learn too is that okay, well, when do we cut dialogue? I mean, how do you really down and keep the character's voice right? That's
Yeah, I
one of
actually have a really good example on that too. Is I have a page in here where that had way too much dialogue between the characters for me to use traditional word bubbles. So I designed the page in a way that it's like they're having this full conversation using the letter boxes while they're fighting.
Mhm.
Yeah, because it's like, man, there's no way I'm going to get enough dialogue in there and do it like a traditional format.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
to figure out how to do
reminds me
things.
a lot of Silver Age books sometimes use conventions like that. So, and of course, some people don't really care for having that much dialogue in their books too. It just depends on the story. I think that if it serves,
You know, some pages I'll go without any dialogue at all, so it just goes back and forth.
and of course, one of the fun things about Ex Dynamos Chaos is, of course, what I think is fun is looking at what kind of scrapes the guys are getting into. Not just how they solve it, but you've got aliens, and you've got genetic hybrids, and you've got
All kinds of just
all kinds of things.
what you could throw at the dartboard and see what happens, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I think that makes it for a really fun world, which is as easy as advertised. So
That's the whole point. It's like, I obviously know what's going to happen because I have this planned 64 chapters in total.
wow.
Yeah. I've got it really well into the future. So I'm not going to hit any writing roadblocks. It's just a matter of, can I actually draw what I have planned? Where am I going to hit the limit of my artistic ability, which I've skidded along already several times. So hopefully I'm improving.
So yeah, well,
But-
I enjoy it. Like I said, I haven't yet, but it's fun. And
I want to write it in a way that most people can't predict what's going to happen next. That's the real thing. It's like there's a method to the madness, but I don't want anybody to be able to figure out what the method is.
Yeah. Guessing in a way that also feels organic. That's the one thing.
Yes. Like I want you to tell that there is a method there. Like the world makes sense to you. You just can't make sense of my plan for the world.
So do you do about a page a week? But that's your output on it?
It has been this year. The first year I did it, it was about 2 pages a week, except in the holidays I slowed down. And then on, because I count my year from February to February since I started in February. January of this year, I ended up doing between 3 to 5 pages a week because I really wanted to catch up on the story, and it ended up knocking out a Hymn of Valor like that. And then it's just been really slow this year because of things that have been happening.
Real life always tends to intrude itself into webcomics.
Always gets in the way.
Which is actually a pretty good segue, not to just leave Ex Dynamos Chaos alone entirely, but Matt has been doing webcomics for a very long time with Cortland, the day before Comic Genesis was Comic Genesis.
I just don't know when to quit. That's the problem.
I don't know that I can quit. I wrote a blog. It's not up right now. I need to reload it. But I wrote a blog for a website called Chris Lawton Ruined My Life. And one of our partners, Chris Lawton, convinced me to start self-publishing. When we started the company, and it's like making comics is like a drug. I think. Once you're into it, you just can't. I have a hard time getting out. It's always feeding in my mind, and I always have these stories to tell. And I'm just a writer, so I'm at the good graces of the artists I'm working with at the time. And have I given them enough money or enough credit or and I can't. What does it take to keep that going for me? But Matt, tell us a little bit about your time in comics.
About my time in comics?
Yeah. Let's talk about it. How you got in, what keeps you there.
What's interesting about the webcomics world is that a lot of people seem to have gotten into comics through comic books or collections of. I mean, for me, it's always been about the comic strip. I grew up reading the funny pages. I always envisioned myself drawing something along the lines of a newspaper comic. So I've never drawn or written anything in the style of a standard comic book with multiple pages, and I'm limited basically to 3 or 4 panels at a time. And it's almost not even by choice. It's just like a language I've learned to speak from the beginning. So everything every story I come up with has to be broken down into 3 or 4 panels at a time. Which works out because that's about how much I can draw at a time.
Now, for a while, you were doing the what was that thing called? That daily grind challenge?
Yeah, funny story about that. I don't even know what happened to that, but there are still 2 guys in it, and but it's not official because they lasted longer than the grind itself did. I don't know who took the money and ran, but somebody did.
Oh, really?
Because the site's not there and nobody's keeping track of it anymore. And somebody made off with like $1,100 maybe. That's how much we'd all put in. Oh, for those not familiar, the Daily Grind Iron Man Challenge started in 2005 as just sort of a collaborative contest where each comic artist would put in $20 and it accumulated into this giant pot. And the agreement was you had to update once every weekday forever. And if you missed a day for whatever reason, you were eliminated. And whoever was left at the very end, I think I split it up into like second and third prizes, but basically whoever was left at the end took home the pot. So I'm trying to remember how many dropped out at first. I think about half of the people were gone after the first couple of months. And there were some big names in it. Chris Crosby was in that competition. There are a couple other very well-known webcomics who are a part of that. But it's all lost to the ether because the site is gone. The forums where people communicated and kept track of the competitors is gone. So don't know. But I dropped out after about a year when I realized my comic was suffering because I was basically cutting corners just to keep in the competition. And someone mentioned to me, I think you've taken your comic about as far as you can and you need a break. And I thought, yeah, I think I do. I'm starting to get, it got to a point where the art was suffering, the writing was suffering. And I thought, I think I've got my $20 worth out of this.
So for those of you who don't, for people who don't know, tell us a little bit about your comic, Matt. I know, of course,
okay,
one now as you were then, but still.
Well, it started off as a comic about Macintosh computers, and a lot of the humor revolved around Steve Jobs and PCs and the trouble with being a graphic designer and just day-to-day work, life situations. And eventually, I took it through a couple different stories, kind of science fiction, taking a evil fictional version of Steve Jobs who wants to take over the world and other bad guys related to the computer world. And
wait, that's not how he actually is?
That's the thing. You know, I love Apple lore. You know, one of my favorite movies is Pirates of Silicon Valley, and what part of my language, but I mean, anyone who knows Steve Jobs will tell you he's an asshole, a creative genius, but he's an asshole. So that's kind of how my comic started, and it started necessarily as a Macintosh-based comic because I did it for a e-zine called About This Particular Macintosh, atpm.com, and I did it there for a couple years. But eventually, I think I didn't like doing just Apple comics or comics about the Macintosh, because eventually I wanted to do, my whole goal was to basically create something more like Dilbert, sort of a daily, sort of an like Office Space kind of a comic, humor around the workplace. And so in 2008, I brought Cortland to an end, in the comic, literally an end. And then I started a new comic called Out at 5, which is, the name comes from a term that Scott Adams brought in his book, The Dilbert Principle, whose principle is, you know, it's basically a business plan based around the idea that you want to get out of the office at 5 and get back to your real life. So make that your goal and everything will be great. So I thought that was a unique term, and the domain name was available. So I bought that and started doing the comic after that. And it took me a couple years with that comic to realize I was getting tired of that too. I think, I mean, honestly, it was a really fun comic to do for a while, but there's only so much you can say about, oh, I don't like this job. I'm so tired of my office and crazy coworkers. And I don't know how Scott Adams does it for 30 years or so. But I brought that comic to an end, and then eventually decided in 2014 to just kind of bring back some of the Cortland stuff, because there was a lot of stuff in that story I didn't like how I brought Out at 5 to an end. There was stuff in Cortland I wanted to wrap up. So it feels like ever since then I've been trying to fix the problems I created in the first 2 comics.
Well, and I'm a big fan, right? So take this one. I don't necessarily think, and you and I have talked about this before, I don't necessarily think they're problems. I think they weren't polished. I think they were just elements that were. I think there's good bones beneath some of the fat, and it just needs a workout. Needs to get into shape. And I think
that was one thing about the Daily Grind that was just such a problem, was that I didn't have time to think about a story. I had to draw something, or else I was going to be out of the contest. So I think that's eventually why I dropped out, was because, you know, I can't keep pushing myself to keep making a comic if I don't have a story, you know, running on fumes and whatever. So, and eventually when I started it again, I thought, you know, if I don't have a story, I'm just not going to draw for a while. And I think that was, I mean, you can't work like that professionally, but I think that worked out better for the comic, because then I wasn't just creating something for the sake of putting it on paper.
That's actually a really interesting aspect about the whole thing too, is because really, I mean, we've all put hundreds of hours into our webcomics, and none of us have made significant money out of it.
Oh, I should say something though. Brave browser. Oh my gosh. It was the most amazing thing. I didn't even realize it has a rewards program for people who, I don't know if you're familiar with the Brave browser. It's I think it's based on either Chrome or Firefox. And I'd always thought of it as a privacy browser, but they have a rewards program because it blocks ads, but the idea is it shows you other ads, and you can monetize your site by allowing people to come by, leave tips and that sort of thing. So I just thought, oh, what the heck? I'll turn it on. I have the PayPal button and hadn't got a lot of traffic out of that. So I thought, oh, it doesn't cost anything to sign up. And suddenly I've made more money with my comic than I've ever made before. And that's not a lot, but it's enough to cover my materials. So that's saying something.
Wow.
And so, you know,
so we're okay.
For
Now,
as little,
I mentioned it before on something. I can't remember what it was. Where do I sign up?
well, if you're using the Brave browser, there's a little triangle in the corner, And that's
Okay.
kind of where I went, because that's where you can go and you sign up. You have to connect to another site called uphold.com, which is where they basically pay you in cryptocurrency. So it's not real money, but it's worth real money. So it's called a BAT, Brave Attention Tokens, I think. So
Okay. Yeah, I use the Brave app on my phone because I like it better than any of the other.
Which it contributes on the phone as well. So,
But I've never. Is the desktop? Because I tried using the Brave desktop a while ago, and it just was buggy.
how long
I use
ago?
it for Windows 10, and it has to give me much trouble that I can recall.
Yeah, it's my main browser.
Yeah.
But I was very impressed with just the fact that I was being paid actual money. And I'd signed up before, if you'd ever used Project Wonderful, which is a sort of an ad banner sort of thing, and barely made anything with that. So I don't know what the secret is, because it doesn't tell me where the money's coming from exactly.
Right.
But
aside from that, I was going to talk about the passion because we didn't have the money, but maybe we'll get the money next year. But because I'm very interested now. But yeah, sorry, you got me all giggling here. But yeah, so we've sunk hundreds of hours into these comics, and we're not making boatloads of money. That was I mean, Dan was successful enough to roll Miguel the Zombie into some stuff, and he's done television programs actually, and all kinds of stuff. They've had quite a bit of traction with that one. But with it, why do you keep making comics, Matt?
I think honestly, and it's kind of a psychological thing. But if I don't stop drawing these comics, this whole world I've created comes to an end. And the characters in it cease to exist. And in a weird way, there's something exciting about being able to bring that world, those characters to life. And in many ways, the story seems to write itself, because I know these characters so well. I mean, I've been drawing the comics since 2002. So I know enough about the characters I've established and what they would do and what they wouldn't. The story kind of writes itself, and I'm almost just kind of going along for the ride.
Same way, honestly, in terms of like the writing the story. We've been doing this so much time with it. It just really feels like it has to exist.
Well, if you've built an organic world, it probably wants to exist on its own.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. So, Metal, why do you keep making comics? I mean, you've got 64 chapters, for crying out loud.
Well, planned at least, but I don't know. I've been making myself comics for like other people to read since I was in elementary school. Like I was the kid in class who figured out, oh, hey, if I staple or fold these pages together and stuff, I can make a 20-page thing of doodles that I could pass around and everybody can read. And it was actually where the Hymn of Valor chapter came from. It was a comic I had made back in elementary school that I just made better. I think I mentioned that on the last time I was on here. And I'm a writer primarily. I like making stories. It's something that I'm like compelled to do. Even when I'm doing other things, I'm thinking about stories to write and stuff like that. And comics, I think, is just my favorite medium because the stories are visual in my head. That's how I see it. So it helps to have a visual medium to tell the stories in.
Yeah, I think that's a big factor for me too. Is I just feel like it's not only if I don't tell them, then no one else will. Although I think that's part of it, but I think the other part of it is just that. I mean, the other side of it is you spend so much time building a universe. It seems like we got to finish the thing, right? I know because I have a more or less an end game figured out. So, but it's going to take a while to get to that point. So, and especially being the writer. And I mean, I do art corrections. And I do the color work and everything on that too. But, it's it's definitely something that I feel driven, a driving. Couldn't hardly even.
What's really fun is when you get to do the editorial stuff. Because I've been finding I've been finding some artists who can't write at all that are like, I need portfolio work. It's like, oh boy, well, do I have shorts for you? And I already got a single one page up on the site. And it's like, well, exposure is worth it when you actually do end up getting exposure. And I run a deal. It's like, I don't care if you sell this as prints either, if you want to. It's like, it really makes no difference to me. Get some money out of the work you put in there. So there's one up on the site, and I've been working with a couple other people. And most of them, because they are trying to get portfolio work and they're trying to butt as artists, they're like, give me hard criticisms. I want this to come out as best as possible. It's like, well, I don't know if it's going to be able to come out as best as possible because you've still got a lot of room to grow, but it'll come out as best as you probably can do it now. So here's some criticisms for that. And yeah, no, it's been fun. It's fun doing editorial stuff. I think that's actually my favorite position. I would love to eventually get to the point where I can just sit back and do script writing and editorial. That would be great. Maybe get some people who are much better at art than I am.
I actually do some of that in terms of that. We've got a couple of different. We have all of our stuff that we do is ideal is part of a single contained shared universe, and so. Nobody has everything down except for me. So I end up doing a lot of the of that kind of stuff, overseeing the projects as they come through, and trying to find ways of coordinating and doing social network stuff and website management. Right now, I'm the only one doing that.
That's something missing from a lot of modern comic book companies I've noticed is the role of a continuity editor, which could just be the editor-in-chief if they're doing their job well, but somebody needs to be focused on making sure everything clicks with everything because a lot of stuff just don't anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing too. It's I don't know if you pay attention to you pay attention to Pete Samedi of Alternate Comics. But he actually talks about the fact that he intentionally does not want a shared universe in Alterna because he doesn't care about continuity. That's not his thing.
There are a lot of downsides to it. So
yeah, and story to story continuity inside. Yes, we want Psycho KO to make sense with itself. But Rob could take care of that. Rob Feldman, it's his baby. He can handle it. So. And I appreciate that, but I'm a huge continuity nut. I cut my teeth on DC Comics after the Crisis, and they rewrote the universe, and there was one solid timeline from the beginning of Dawn up until then, and so that's the stuff that I've always just loved. And so when we started doing our universe and putting it together in 2005, I was just like, no, this is okay. Let's do this. Let's make this work. Let's rewrite the 20th century and so that's my baby. I mean, Matt can vouch for this. When I first discovered, and this is after he'd already retired the strip, I read the whole thing like twice, and I emailed him and I said, I want to interview you. And I started like digging all these weird questions, and he's like, I haven't thought about that in a decade. Let me go back and look. Because I love that deep look. I'm going to try to bring Dan back in here, guys. Let's see if it works. It's calling. We'll find out here.
Hey, Matthew, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
I'm thinking you can. Hey, can you hear me, Matthew?
I can hear you, yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Wow, I can hear you a lot better. What did I miss?
Oh, so much.
My bad. Sorry about that.
No problem. Specifically, we were talking about the Metals comic and Matt's Cortland, a little but we had just left off the question of why do you keep making comics? And so what's your take on that?
Why do I what?
Keep making comics.
Keep making comics?
Yes.
Probably because I'm insane.
I'll second that answer as well.
I mean, I've never made a claim to be a person who was sane. So, and I could be joking a little bit, but I'm actually being pretty serious. So for me, I don't know how to not make comics. Like if someone said spend a month and don't make any comics, I wouldn't really know how not to. So when I have a paid gig at Nightmare Before Christmas, like I understand not working on that because maybe I just finished it, or maybe that I don't have the corrections yet. That's something that's a job. But if I wasn't doing that, I'd just be working on my job as zombie or another idea. I mean, I used to just come up with, if there was a maiden voyage and all these other comics, I would just do like an issue or a graphic novel or an 8-page story or a 3-page story. Like, I don't know how to not make comics. And to me, I think it's the best way to tell stories. It has the visual and the narrative. It has it's easy to do for, someone on their own or with a few friends. I don't know how to not express myself in artistic means.
Yeah. No, I actually feel very similar. Now I'm not a good enough where I'd call myself the artist really. I mean, I do a little bit of it, but it's not very good. And so I've been a lot dependent upon the partnerships to get the comics I wanted to make done. But I know that when that doesn't work on somebody else's schedule, I tell you, I really feel like labored, like there are voices inside of me trying to scream out, and I don't know what to do with it if I can't find some way to get them to speak. I have to tell their stories. It's like a compulsion for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the way that I make sense of existence, as we discussed earlier, I'm a Christian. I have to think that, the only way that I can go to sleep at night, really, is to believe that there's a purpose to things and that there's something there's a system that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That this isn't just a random planet with organisms that have happened to create iPhones and things like that. Like, to me, I can't make sense of that.
Right.
And that's just my personal take. Because I would be, if I was, I guess to me there are two options. There's Christian and there's nihilist. Like if I wasn't a Christian, I'm probably I'd be an atheist, but I'd also probably just be destructive.
Right.
I'd probably just be an agent of chaos. Because to me, I don't understand something in the middle personally. But the way that I make sense of emotions that I have, the way that I make sense of feelings that I have are through expressing them through artistic means. Mm-hmm. And for a while I was playing music instead of comics, or I was playing music more. But I just don't, next time I have a good idea for a song, I'll write it. It's been a while since I think I've had an idea worth writing. But for comics, if I have, My God the Zombie, that first book was about, that's how I coped with losing my job as a school teacher, and some of the factors involved therein. And I was laid off from that, but there were a lot of factors involved.
Right.
So, I was laid off, it was without, it was no fault of my own. The budget cut my position, and I could have tried to get hired at a different school, but there was so much nonsense, I just didn't do it. So, and there was a lot of other factors I could talk about, but there were a lot of other factors that kind of prevented that as well. But I could try to get relicensed to teach, but I'm not doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I just imagine. I think so. The other thing I think is it's talking about, you know, what art is, right? And I've always believed that art is. What am I hearing?
That's our Christmas clock chiming.
Oh, okay.
It's the top of the hour.
It's Christmas o'clock. Anyway, as I was saying, I had this pretentious point to make before I got interrupted by a Christmas caroling jingle. Oh, that's why they tune into my show, is to watch me make a fool of myself. Anyway, what I was saying is that I really think that the point of art is that it's just the world holding a mirror up to itself, right? Is it's the way we learn to understand our existence by reflecting it back to ourselves. And I think that comics are really pointed at that because they're I specifically think hero comics, whether they're superhero comics or westerns or space adventures, but hero comics because they're our very best selves reflected back to us. And then we can decide whether we meet that standard or don't. And that's part of why I always like superhero comics, but I think it goes beyond that too. And one of the things about you know, Dan's comic with My Gal the Zombie is not a hero comic necessarily.
Yeah, that's probably my own that was the most prominent.
Yeah. And it's not a hero comic necessarily, but Chelsea has to rise above her challenges. So she still has this inner nobility that is great, even though it's outside of a hero paradigm per se. And it deals with, you know, and it's got the fun horror element kind of stuff to it, but it's still all ages friendly, and it's a really, really fun story. But it's still there's still this aspirational element to it that it's just so much fun. I really enjoyed it. And it's a bummer to sample it online right now. I heard something. I don't know what it was. Anyway, but yeah. So now with the you do your stuff. Have you worked on any more My Gal the Zombie stuff recently?
Yeah, we just put out a Christmas issue that we debuted a Game Changer, but that's the only place it's available. And then I'll probably have a few copies of my own, but I'm not selling it.
Okay. Well, I actually might have to, since I'm going up to Shattern tomorrow anyway, I might see if I can snake a copy.
Yeah. So you could, I don't know, maybe it'll be on their store NV, which is stonegamechanger.storenv.com. So, or you could always just post on the Facebook page like, hey, if anyone's saying it, say I want to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you can get figured out.
Sweet.
But that one has the Christmas story from the first book, and then it has there was one I just took photos of, and I posted it online last Christmas. So there's a werewolf girl and a Christmas witch character, so it has that story to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So,
But those are just like, I have an idea, so I'll just do like a short story, like 8 pages with some character I want to do. I mean, if I had the financial process, I would just do a whole graphic novel of all of it.
right. That's one of those things that, you know, you kind of got to figure out how it's going to fit in.
What's that?
I said that's the kind of thing where when you have an idea and you don't necessarily have the resources, you just kind of, you know, it's like taking notes.
Yeah. Any story can be told in 1 page or 1,000 pages. It doesn't matter. So you just tell it on 1 page, and if it's snippets, you're 100 pages.
There might be a middle ground in there, though. I mean, you know.
Oh, sure. But I mean, it could be, though.
Yeah, I suppose. But yeah. So, man, I had another question that just skipped out of my mind.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about what we have coming up. Dan, what is the next thing on your agenda arts wise?
Saturday. Okay, well, tomorrow I'm doing a Skype session with a school, with a classroom. And then Saturday, I am at a toy drive in Denver and Westminster. And then work-wise, I have this Turtles number 101. I have a variant cover for. That comes out in a few weeks. I think it was pushed back to January. I'm not sure what date, but that comes out in a few weeks.
Actually, and that brings up a question I had about the Ninja Turtles 100 cover that Neil Adams did. Are you and Neil acquainted?
What?
Are you and Neil Adams acquainted?
Yes, I'm a Neil Adams fan.
So yeah, I just
I've met him before. I don't know him, but we have mutual friends. I've talked to him a few times. I actually did a signing at Mile High Comics. It was me and him and a few other people one year.
Oh, cool.
I was right next to him. Yeah. That was like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Michael Euston, he was there as well. And James O'Barr. And like maybe another person. Like a local guy, a friend.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've never had the chance to meet Mr. Adams, but his stuff's legendary.
Yeah. He ain't the first place. I mean, he'll probably talk to most anybody.
Cool. Yeah. Hopefully I have a chance to make that happen someday. That'd be fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he does a lot of conventions. He does more conventions than I do. That's a lot.
So, the metal, what is next on your creative schedule?
Well, I'm working on Ex Dynamis Chaos Episode 5, A Sighting in New Mexico, which is actually Chapter 6. And at the same time, I'm working on the next pop rock short, which is actually, if there was a single thing that I would want to send somebody to read, it would be the short that I made, the first one. And it's the actual title is The Pop Rocks featuring Mitch and Sandy. And it's about two girls who have a garage band that just blew up on the internet overnight. And they are trying to get into the industry, and they keep sniping like all these coveted tour spots and dates and stuff. So the industry are sending top talent, or I use parodies of the talent, but the top talent to come and take them out in kind of like a Scott Pilgrim-esque style. It's this really fun, wacky, heavily cartoon style adventure. And the two girls are sisters, so they share more in common than they don't, but they're as close to diametrically opposite as siblings get.
Right, yeah. Night and day. Yeah. I have a couple of those myself. They're boys, but they're I have a sunshine children. Of course they're grown. 18 and 16. When did that happen? So I have not read that at all. Is it online?
Yeah, it's all in one gallery. I think I actually sent you the link to it too, but
okay. I may have just
things get lost in the it happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just an 8-page short.
Okay.
It's fun little cartoony style. I'm gonna do a couple of those or so, and then eventually I'm going to make like a 100-page graphic novel about like their origin and stuff.
Okay.
It's a lot. I have a lot more fun drawing those super cartoony styles than I do even the somewhat cartoonish, slightly more realistic style that I do for Ex Dynamis Chaos. It just, you gotta fit the style for the comic you're making. So
I think that's fair. I know, like with our current Forces artist right now, Rolf, he's got this I call it the grungy Archie style. It's kind of like Archie feel, but it's a little more rough edge. And I fixed the high school superhero supervillain thing really well. So I think it's fun. So Matt, what have you got going on creatively? Oh, you're unmuted, man.
Yeah, I didn't want any more strange noises to come on through. But yeah, this year with my comic, I'm doing something a little different. That's something I've never done before. Every comic, when it's published, corresponds with that period of the year. So in other words, on Thanksgiving, there's going to be a Thanksgiving related comic around Christmas. It's going to be Christmas time in the comic. In the summer, there are going to be summer things happening. And one of the characters is going to be having a baby. So everything's kind of leading up to that moment. And I've usually when I draw a comic, it's in its own timeline. It's in its own space in the universe. And I thought, well, this time I'm going to just try and experiment for 52 weeks. And that's plan ahead a little bit and plan for a story that revolves around, the time of basically the time of year. And I think one thing that's definitely done is it's kept me from wandering off and doing a whole 9 months on one particular story because, time being what it is, it can't last. I mean, it can't fit that way if you're chronologically linked to the actual calendar year. So,
Right.
And it's interesting because things have to be short. I mean, stories, comics have to be short. They have to be topical. They have to be, But I think to me it's a good exercise because I'm actually planning out a whole year's worth of story ahead of time, rather than letting the characters do what they want and filling out my comic archives as they see fit.
You just run that rule. They will do what I tell you.
Well, they kind of have to. I mean, it is an interesting exercise because, if it were up to me normally, a story that might take 6 strips when I'm limited to, okay, well, I'm going to run into February and I have something else happening then. It might run instead for a couple months and
kind of more
maybe
sitcom.
It doesn't need to run that long.
Kind of more like a sitcom than a HBO series, so to speak.
Or something like that. The characters don't always reset to 0 once the story's done, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, fair enough. Now, one, of course, is for those of you who have not read this at all, you're talking Crispin and Angie.
Yes.
That's what's been going on right now. Crispin is a new character that Matt introduced a couple of years ago in a story it's called 5 Years Later that wrapped up the end of the Part 5 office politics story arc, say. And Angie is one of the first characters with the original Cortland run way back in the day, and so it's a continuation of some of that old stuff with some new stuff. It's and they're a young married couple. It's adorable. Having formerly been part of a young married couple, I just find the Crispin and Angie stuff just beautiful.
I was once a young married couple myself.
It's been
one of the whole reasons I introduced this character to the stories because what I wanted to do was shift the comic from office comedy, to some more of a family oriented comic, something I could draw from my real life, everyday experiences. Because, at the time I ended the comic, or I put the comic on hiatus, my daughter Hannah was born, and I thought, I'm going to come up with some funny ideas having a baby, and there's just going to be some natural humor out of this that I need to prepare for because none of the characters in my comic could accommodate a baby at that moment. Unless I wanted to bring in a stork or do something like Gasoline Alley did and just have one here on the doorstep. So I thought, okay, I'll take a little time and prepare for this sort of thing. And yeah, here it is, 4 or 5 years later, and I'm almost there.
Yeah. There were a lot of threads though, man. You had so much stuff going on. So definitely.
So
and I have I think one of the things that's been so interesting about your comic book journey, having read most of it, Matt, I encourage everybody to go check out cortlandcomic.com and outat5.com, and they're linked. You can get the archives of one from the other. But it's massive. It'll take you weeks. I've binged on other webcomics. It's not actually that long. Yeah.
Well, what's funny though is the original Cortland comic still has more strips than all of the Out at 5 combined.
Oh yeah.
And that's because I did that for 5 days a week for several years. So
and it was 2003 up to 2008, right? 5-year stretch, right?
Just about. Although it was really from 2004, 2005, 2006 when I was doing 5 days a week. And I chose to do that myself because literally I knew I had about 1,000 bad comics in me that I needed to get out before I could actually start doing something, halfway decent. And
I don't think they were bad. I just think they weren't.
well, what's fun though, go back and look from the comics I did in 2004 and jump forward 2 years. It's a ridiculous amount of, and I knew that at the time. I knew at the time I need to just start drawing and keep drawing frequently. So
technical skill is definitely, no question. But I still think the stories are so much fun. And but what I was going to say though is one of the things that I could say, having read all of it, is it's so much fun to see these same characters reinterpreted in multiple genres. You've got very straightforward sitcom humor. You've got this those fantasy elements. You've got cyborgs. You've got you've got aliens. You've got gamer humor. You've got joke a day. Office stuff. You've got all kinds of stuff. I mean, and even with the cutesy family circle kind of stuff that is in there once and again, and it's one of the stuff. It's fun to be able to see these same characters being their consistent selves, regardless of what happens to be going on in the back. And that's one of the things that I've appreciated about people that can do that kind of thing. I think the first time I was exposed to something like that that I could think of anyway was in the late 90s, early 2000s when Peter David. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't Peter David. It
Larry
was,
David?
No. It was in comics. I can't remember the dude's name. It's going to come to me later. The Young Justice series, and you might not be familiar with it, but they took. Matt vanished. Well, if he comes back, I'm going to keep talking about Young Justice, though.
Oh yeah, because he can always just rewind and watch it.
Here he comes. I'll add him. You're back. No, that's fine. What I was going to say about Young Justice, and I can't remember the writer's name right now. It was the third Robin, the clone Superboy, and Impulse, the Flash's cousin, who formed a superhero team, and in their title, it was hilarious. It was you had Robin played the straight man, Superboy was the slightly the jokester, and then the really played for jokes was Impulse, and they had this wonderful buddy dynamic, but it was also like and it was superhero-y, but it was mostly comedy, and characters that were taken very, very seriously in their own titles were very much funny, but still in character, being fun in the pages of Young Justice, and I just loved it. It was my favorite title for many years because it just did such a good job of, and then they had other characters that came in and was part of it, and it ran for about 5 years, I think, and then Jeff Johns made everybody angry and sinister. I don't know what was with that, but it really lost a lot of charm. Yeah, it was a great thing, and the idea that you could have characters be part of the same continuity but have different flavors based on how they worked out, I thought was enthralling and intriguing. And that's one of the things that we took with our universe when we were putting it together. Was I said I want to do something like this, so that we've got forces. It's totally played for jokes. It's super kids in superhero high school. It's definitely a gag. Their school rivals are the villain school across town. Ooh, and but how do we put that into universe where that's serious? We're serial killers. We've got actual alien invasions. We've got all this heavy stuff. There's demons and there's vampires and there's werewolves and there's a guy who controls food telepathically telekinetically with his mind. How do we make those work in universe? And I think we pulled it off. I don't know. I mean, of the 6 people that have read our stuff, they don't seem to mind.
People are
Yeah, I mean, I've been enjoying what I've seen.
Yeah, I do. I hope you're right, Dan. I hope it's more than 6. It has to be more than 6.
You can't look at the Google Analytics.
Yeah, well, we don't have them installed on the current website anyway, so I have to go by. I just hope that somebody leaves a comment so I can be like, thank you, commenter.
Yeah.
Oh no, you're a robot from Indonesia. I'll just delete that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the it's a challenge, of course, I think, trying to find a demographic, right? Stories that you're telling are actually connecting with anyone. And that's one of those things. I mean, of course.
You guys still there?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're here. Were you
Are
gonna
you?
say
Anything?
Oh, Noah. Were you gonna say something, Dan?
Oh no, I was thinking I wasn't hearing anything from you. Okay.
Oh, okay. We're good. Okay. What I was going to say is it's always a challenge to try to see whether or not the stories you're telling are actually connecting with somebody. And so the question I have for everybody is, if you discover that nobody was really enjoying it, would you keep making your comic? Matt, you start.
Honestly, yes, because I enjoyed just the process of making it. I don't get any comment. I mean, I used to get a lot more comments, a lot more feedback, and being part of Comic Genesis, that really created an environment where people were always interacting with each other when they were making comics, and nothing has come along other than social media, where I don't want to just put my comic out there on Facebook and Twitter and have people comment on it. I like to keep it within my own space. But even so, to me, it's more of like any artist, you create something not because you're trying to please or other people or get other people's attention. You're doing it because you want to make it. You enjoy the process of creation. So I think I would still be doing it even if I just did it for my own amusement and kept it in a drawer.
Metal?
Oh yeah, I enjoy my story more than anybody else does. I can tell you that. But I've already gotten too much positive feedback anyway. Like, most people tell me who read it that they really enjoy it because it's just a fun, crazy little thing. They like my sense of humor more than anything, which is what shows through the comic. Even people who haven't read it online, like I had this one experience where I had a friend who was going to check out a college in Dallas proper, and he didn't want to drive all the way up there by himself, so I went with him. And I brought the print of my first chapter with me, and I showed it to his college advisor, and she was flipping through laughing at it the whole time. So it's like, if some random person who's sitting there advising for colleges is enjoying the humor, I think I'm probably doing the right thing. It's just finding the major demographic. But I've already had, I think 5,000 unique visitors to the site, so I'm not too worried. It's going in the right direction.
Yeah, Dan. What about yourself? If nobody was reading your,
Well, because right now that's kind of what I'm doing rotation. And it's kind of sad when someone says, "Oh, thanks for I'll draw on it, I'll sign a book of it. Oh, thanks for this. I'm never gonna read it. I'm gonna keep it nice." I'm like, you should read it. Like, maybe don't drop it in your toilet, but you should read it and not mess it up. I think I told someone, I said, read it in bed, fall asleep holding it, let it get all folded up.
Yeah.
So, but ultimately, if someone, I'm not going to make comics for people, like, if I want to make a comic, it doesn't really matter if people read it or not. I'm making it because I want to make it. If people want to read it, that's great. But if I want to sell comics, I have to make stuff people will read.
Mm-hmm. And that's
or if they want to buy and never read, because they think it's really worth $1,000.
Yeah, definitely. I would much rather have somebody. I don't have a lot of people coming up to me for signatures, but I'd way rather have a comic that looks like it's been beaten to hell than have something that's in a lucite case. I as a writer, I want
Are we frozen?
I think he found himself in this weird time space where he can't move anymore.
Okay, so is it our show now?
I don't know. We might have to wait for him to catch back up to us.
Okay. All right, everybody. You're with Matt J. and the Metal here at the Mattriarchy.
Yes, the new hot show as we take over.
Absolutely. So, and I guess we're now co-hosts instead of guests. So what should we talk about?
I don't know. How much Reese was dropping the ball in this episode? No, he's doing a great job.
No, we got to hang in there or we're going to lose all of our 2 viewers.
Oh, no. Yes, Matt would want us to go on.
Can we read some super chats? Oh, wait, we can't.
No, we can't. He doesn't have enough subscribers for that.
Well, we'll work on that. So, well, for lack of other topics, I can talk about my shirt. These are, this is Trace Ballou and Frank Conniff, who are from Mystery Science Theater.
Oh, yes.
I
recognize them.
Yes. I got this shirt personally from Trace Ballou. They have been to Omaha 4 times. I'm a big Mystery Science Theater fan because they do the Lord's work in taking terrible movies and making them funny. So.
We actually do have a question in the chat.
Oh, yes.
It says, between like a DC or Marvel book, which book would you want to rewrite to fix? Which I guess you're more of a strip guy, so that would probably apply more to me.
Comic strip, everybody. Don't get excited.
Yeah. I love comic strips. I grew up reading them too. They're great. I especially loved BC was probably my favorite one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Noah Wiley.
But if I had to pick, honestly, I'd probably just go with the entire run of Captain Marvel, because I used to really like Carol Danvers as a character, and ever since they made her Captain Marvel, she has just been horrible. Like,
now, I'll
just
tell you what.
Now.
My very first experience with Captain Marvel was with one of my dad's old Mad magazines. There's a very famous comic with Super Duper Man, and parody obviously of Superman, but he encounters a character named Captain Marbles and dukes it out with him. And at the time, I think I must have been about 6 when I encountered this book, because these were from when he was a kid. And I had no idea the story between DC and Fawcett Comics and the lawsuit and the back and forth, and I can appreciate it better now as an adult. But my goodness, that's a different Captain Marvel. But to me, that'll always be the first, original, and only.
Yeah.
So I do know some comic characters, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically there were 2 different Captain Marvels. There was Marvels and what was it? Before it was DC.
It was Fawcett Comics.
Fawcett, yeah. I knew it was something with an F, but yeah. Oh, with his old buddy Steamboat that they want to forget about.
Oh goodness.
Oh. Yeah, I figured he would have found his way back in.
So is there nobody hosting the show? I'm not familiar with the StreamYard, so I don't see any.
Okay, so StreamYard is kind of like the way Hangouts was. So once you start it up, it is hosting the entire thing. I don't know how this ends, unless maybe once it hits the time, if we both leave, the stream might just cut.
Now, I have one tab with my Facebook open, so I'm waiting for some message telling me that I need to log out and then log back in.
Yeah.
But
and I know we're still live because I do have my phone up.
Yeah. So should we do some live reads for Purple Mattresses or Blue Apron?
Oh, Purple Mattresses. Sure, let's get him some sponsors that he doesn't have. You maybe ruin him for sponsorship forever.
Okay, folks, let me tell you about Birch Gold. Birch Gold is great because if you want to invest in anything, you need to invest in Birch Gold. Solid gold that you can't hold in your hands because you could be a piece of paper and then they keep it in the bank for you. But trust me, you can have gold. Birch Gold, call them today.
This is the worst. He's in the thing. I don't know if there's like a way we have to let him back in or not. I don't see like a studio control room or anything like
that. This is our show now.
I do see him in the chat. We have commandeered it like the privateers we are.
Are you not entertained?
Probably not, if I'm going to be honest. Maybe they're more entertained.
Good gravy.
Oh, there he is.
And now back to a regularly scheduled program.
Oh my goodness. Okay. My internet just totally flaked out on me. Like it dropped it entirely. I was gonna try to get on with my cell phone.
It's okay. You know what? We hung in there. We kept the show
here's
going.
The problem. I couldn't get on.
We did answer a question from the chat.
Because there was nobody who could let me in.
Yeah.
I went to the invitation link to get here because I didn't have the thing on my. Oh my goodness! I definitely lost Dan. I'm gonna go ahead and try to. So, PK, thank you in the chat says he kept you guys here for me. So. And,
I wasn't going anywhere.
There were all kinds of comments in the chat, just trying to fill time. So, wow.
So, did you see what we were doing while you were gone? Because we might want to delete this live stream when we're all done.
Now, neither is really who they should be. That's there you go. Actually, I think that's probably a fair.
That's a pretty true statement right there.
Yeah, that's pretty straight on. So, see if I can resurrect the connection here with trying to read here. Okay, put the phone there. Oh my goodness. So now you Metal, you have a paper copy of every issue, right? You guys do that through
the Kablam's Indie Planet.
Right.
Yeah. I would do print runs if I wanted to, but
I'm sorry, what now?
Right now it's just to support, or if you want to have a physical copy, so it's more of like an extra option than an actual print run. But it's there. I mean, I like the idea of print on demand because I like people from the beginning whenever they want. I always hated the scarcity thing, even though that is what drives profits.
Okay, so we're trying it again here to get Dan. Are you back, Dan? Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, that. Yeah, my internet actually died. My internet actually died here. So yeah. So it wasn't you this time, it was me. And the worst about it was I couldn't get it back again. And so the show kept live just without me, and it was a whole ordeal to get back in here. So but yeah. So that's it. So that's the story at that point. But we were just talking. The Metal was mentioning his stuff is available online, but also there's physical copies available on Indie Planet, right?
Yes, available on Indie Planet.
Oh, the Metal has his webcomic available in print form on Indie Planet. And Matt, is your one print comic still available at all, or do I have one of the only copies?
I think it's still available. I did that mostly as an experiment because I want to do. I'm at least when you have as many comics as I do, I like the idea of being able to have like that hard, a physical copy where you can leaf through them rather than click on a website.
Yeah.
So as far as I know, it's still available on Kablam, but honestly, what I've been looking for is a way to print the entire run of comics I've done. I just haven't found. I mean, I haven't really found a place to do that yet. I was looking at Kablam, looking at Amazon, trying to figure out if I wanted to do something like for a Kindle or e-reader rather than a print copy, depending on what's the most feasible. But I love the idea of having one or a couple perfect bound copies of the whole collection, if at all possible.
That would be a real challenge for you, Matt, because your sizes are all over the place.
Yeah, I figured that out by
experimenting with your format.
Well, so when I started out at 5, I took a real good hard look at all the different formats and picked one, basically, the comic strip format that I thought, okay, if I wanted to, I could put this in a book if I, But yeah, Cortland's going to be a little bit more challenging.
Now, remind me because Dan had asked in the chat. I mean, had asked before. The one copy you have printed, I cannot remember the name of the story. I have 2 copies, but I can't remember the name of the story.
Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish, I think.
Yes, Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish. And it is, I'll just give a little clip of it. It's one of the background characters from the epic. What happened when he disappeared from the strip? Because there was a moment where he's like, "Deuces, I'm out," and he just walks from the story entirely. And the Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish, it tells the story of what happens to this guy's weed. When he walked away, where did he go? And it's an endearing little tale. I love it. I bought it twice.
You bought it twice?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was possible.
Well, no. What it did is it had the PayPal, and I added some extra money to it to make sure it would cover all the shipping and everything, and he gave me 2 copies.
Oh,
So
go.
I was going to give one away.
The link still works. If it's still available, it should. The link is on out@5.com. It's one of the posts from a couple years ago, so I assume if the link still works, it's still there.
Yeah. I was going to try to find it, but I didn't get back from my road trip as quickly as I thought I would. And the My Gal the Zombie comics that I brought out are on my shelf over there. They're with my some of my square bound stuff, but floppies are all in filing cabinets or the ottoman or I have floppies everywhere. It's a mess in my house. We do have a question from the chat. PK asks me, do you prefer print or digital as a primary format? Metal answered, but I'll get to him later. So Matt,
format for reading or for drawing?
Both.
Well, I prefer print for reading, but that's not always an option. Because a lot of the comics I like to read are only available online. And also for drawing, I am very much a pen and ink person. For one reason, I don't have a stylus that's good enough or big enough to be comfortable using to draw, digitally. But, I just spend enough time working on a computer all day. I don't want to spend my free time drawing on a computer. And I've been that way ever since I started. That's one reason I don't do the comic in color, because that just took so much time to do digitally in Photoshop. And it's like, if I'm not being paid to use Photoshop, I just don't want to deal with it right now. At least not for as long as it would take to color all the comics that I want to draw.
Yep. I think it makes a lot of sense. Dan, we'll go to you. Because you didn't hear the question the first time. Do you prefer print or digital as a primary format, both for creation and for release? the metal. How about you?
Well, you might want to repeat what he said because I didn't hear a word of that. It came out like a drowned out robot.
Okay.
Or like Charlie Brown's teacher.
He had said that he prefers to create, to draw digitally because it's way easier to fix errors. As when you're on pen and paper, you either have to redraw it or white out or all kinds of stuff. It's just a hassle. But for reading it, he prefers it in paper because it's real. But if it's cheap enough, he'll buy digital because money talks. Yep, yep. I know a lot of people that will for Kickstarters PDF just because they want to see it first, and then if the Kickstarter is successful, then they'll buy it from the store later. So, so the metal. When it comes to you, what do you like to draw? You do your stuff all digitally, right?
Actually, no, I prefer digital as a release just because I like it convenient and as quick to me as possible. And I like not having to carry around a whole bunch of books when I just want to read on the go. I love reading comics on my phone. But I think also I prefer reading digitally because I read so many webcomics back when I was in high school. So it just came down to that. But creation, I only do anywhere between a half to 2/3 of the work digitally. I do all the coloring and lettering digitally, but I actually ink and pencil by hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I do kind of a mixed medium thing there. And I don't have like a tablet I can see as I draw. I only have one of those really old fashioned like Wacom draw here while looking. I could never adjust to that very well. I feel like I have control when I have a pen in my hand and I'm over what I'm drawing. So to create, mostly traditional, but for reading, I actually prefer digital. Though it's nice to have physical. I like, there's a feeling about having a physical print of something in your hands.
Yeah. For me, we do, well, for most of the books we do kind of a mixed media approach, where we do a little bit of digital, a little bit of pen ink, and some of that's because Rolf does our primary art for Forces. My son Taliesin does touch-up work for Forces. Pencils and inks together on a project coming up next year, so doing that digitally. Well, first of all, Rolf is not. He's an old school artist. I mean, he does. In fact, if he goes to correct an error, he'll cut the Bristol board and paste it on another piece. I mean, he's really old school about stuff. So that just works better for that format. But also, I find from an editorial perspective, it's easier to have a piece of paper than to try to trade screens for us in that. And then I can take the blue pencil and okay, let's try doing this, and then they can take it and walk off with it and go do that. And then I'll do the colors. And so sometimes I'll take I'll use Krita or Paint Shop Pro or Manga Studio. And then I'll tweak it and mod it, or sometimes flip panels around, or all that kind of stuff after the art's done too, if I get it like I want it. So I'll do a little bit of all of that stuff, but then we color it our stuff digitally too. With the expositioner story that we're working for our crowdfund that we did last summer, we're in production on that one. We've got the physical pencils because that's what format that our penciler likes. Rico. Then Rico hands the pencil pages off to Barry, and Barry does digital inks and colors. So then he'll scan up the pencils and ink over it digitally, and then do that with the colors digitally as well. So we do a lot of whatever works for the artist, whatever works for the story, kind of fit that in there. And so that's just kind of the way we go about doing that. A little bit here and a little bit there. And And I've done a little bit of digital inking too. We have a trading card that is going to be coming out. That's Titania, and she is one of our character forces. We're going to get a trading card of hers done, and the pencils were done by Carl, Carl the amateur on Carl.
Oh yeah, Carl's good people.
Carl's good people, yeah. But he did the pencils.
Yeah, I love Carl. He's great.
And I inked his stuff and colored it, and it was a lot of fun. A jam piece, but those are my inks on it, and then I think we're gonna look at the colors I did there. And so it just depends whatever's the best fit for the artist and for the story. But I way prefer. We've done a lot of webcomics, we've done digital, but I way prefer the physical release. Especially favorite format is newsprint. I love the feel of it, I love the smell of it, I love getting ink on my hands. I love everything about newsprint comics. We just
Get some silly putty with it.
Oh man, it's the best. It's the best, right? In fact, one of the great things, this is actually a really cool piece right here that in this book of Dan's, this My Gal the Zombie right here, it's colored to look like old newsprint in this story. So it's just got that old feel to it. I just love it. But of course, Alterna's doing newsprint right now, and I almost buy their whole catalog. So in fact, just last night I read like 2 of their books. It was great. Red Koi, go out and buy it. But yeah, it's I love physical stuff. In fact, one of the things I dislike about digital, even if I'm Kickstarter or Indiegogo, I almost never just get the digital, because I almost never. I've got a file folders just full of digital comics that I've never even cracked into, and some of them where I got because I'm like, oh, this looks really good, and I download it. It sits in a folder, and I forget about it. It's not there sitting in my stack next to my bed, so I don't see it, And so I way prefer the physical, hands-on book. So PK in the chat.
Well, that's why I think certain apps for these things are pretty handy. Like I have both Comixology and for some of the webcomics, I have Tapas on my phone as well. And I feel like if I have an app that has the library there, I'm far more likely to read it because it's almost like opening up my drawer and pulling out a physical comic.
Yeah.
And I actually have all of my current ones up on Comixology for like 99 cents a pop because I do add bonus pages into the comics. You get some extra reading about the characters.
Oh, cool. PK says, I seem to be a weirdo in the sense that I love digital. I have to have a monitor that I can swing to portrait and enjoy vivid color and art that never fades. And to have it to click morning, noon, and night. Yeah, I like to read in the tub. That's the other thing too, is you can't do that with a digital very well, or risk losing it forever.
That goes for the paper too.
Well,
yeah, if you have slippery fingers.
I'm really good at drying out comics anymore. I know all the tricks. So, but yeah, we thought one of the things we've considered doing too with some of our longer form stuff that we're kind of on the back burner with is actually doing like digital releases for like the individual issues and then collecting them in trades later on. But we're kind of behind with getting some art done on some of that stuff. So I don't know if I had a long form series I wrote that I'm writing. I got the first couple issues hammered out, but it's called The Tale of the Strange Wanderings of Gilboy Henderson. And it is the story of a golden age sidekick who is left behind when his superhero, who's an alien, returns to space. So then he's left behind to manage the farm, so to speak, and then he's kidnapped by a wizard. And there's a whole nautical legendary story that I've superheroes, with mythology, with all kinds of stuff worked in there. And that's what the heck, BK? I'm not even going to acknowledge that. Everybody goes to look at the chat now.
No, I had already read it, but then I looked at it again when you said it.
But anyway, yeah, that was what I was thinking about, just to kind of lower that barrier of thing, and try to ad space built up, trying to do that as a digital comic through like a subscription service, and then on over. And we're trying to think about new ways of maybe using Patreon to kind of do something like that, as to build up some capital for projects as we go. We've got some stuff on deck for 2020 that hopefully will be exciting. We're finishing up our current Forces story. We're reloading the archives. But then we've also got a paper book or a special that's called I've Been to Hell that we're working on. And Rolf's penciling it, and my son Taliesin's doing inks, and then I'm going to color it. And it is the story of Chad and Greg, who are our characters from Forces. Chad is the hero student who's kind of a jerk. And then his good guy, Greg, buddy, is a villain school. And over spring break in the year 2005, they go with their friend Kevin on his trip to visit his grandfather's home in hell. And it's not real hell. Don't worry, Matt. It's fake hell.
Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah,
I thought you meant Hell, Michigan.
Yeah, well, it's actually you drive to Hell, Michigan to get to False Hell. In our universe, there's a pocket dimension that is inhabited by demons who are cast out of heaven, and they got sick of roaming the earth, and they built a suburb in False Hell, this little pocket dimension, and it's got lawns, and it's got houses, and it's got picket fences, and it's got hell beasts in the front lawn, and they have this little, suburban like life, like every house is the Addams Family house, that kind of a thing. And that's where Demon Priest's mother was raised, and then she went to Earth and she converted to Christianity and married an Episcopalian minister and had a baby who was a supervillain named Demon Priest. And
I actually liked the joke on that, where the big problem wasn't even that she was a demon.
Yeah. So they that was she's I think we wrote that she's a Baptist and he's an Episcopalian, and that's their argument. But yeah, so it's there's a whole adventure that we've got going on, and the pencil art's about a third done, and we're hoping to have that out early summer to either crowdfund or sell direct. We're going to see how that all works out. That's our next project in the docket, and we'll hopefully be announcing another couple after the new year, depending on how that works out. But yeah, so that's and then we're trying to look at ways of revamping our Patreon to help out with all of that. But those are some of the stuff, and then of course, for anybody who's watching now or watches later, who was a backer of our Indiegogo campaign for Tales of Shadow, we are bumping that to a March release. Obviously, we're not shipping in December because it's not done yet. It's getting close though, but we're gonna bump it to a March release, which makes me sad, but it needs to happen to get the product on it. Just run into some headaches. Rico ended up moving, getting a new job, and that was a big part of it.
So in March, I can start hounding you about where's my book.
Yes, yeah, you can start hounding me now, but I'm going to tell you with March.
I know it's not going to make a difference if I start hounding you now. I'm going to, let that pent up and save it like in a bottle, shaking like a soda can.
There you go. For the backers, we are going to be sending out a 5-page sample. As hopefully be Monday. So at least you just get a teaser. You see what we're working on. You just kind of, and yeah. So also you guys will we're also going to send out. We've done some more work on the trading cards. And we're going to have some roughs to show off soon with that too. So yeah, that's where we're at with the thing. So I talked about you guys, your plan. Those are our plans, and there's some other stuff that we may get out in 2020. We've got a novella that Chris Lawton and I wrote a number of years ago. That is the story of that alien hero who goes back to space. It's called Space 1951: An Odyssey, and we're going to be re-releasing that novella with illustrations and maybe a rock opera soundtrack. That's maybe, but we're looking for that for third quarter possibly. And then who knows? Who knows what else? Some other secret stuff that we won't talk about here. So, but yeah, that's where we're at. Oh, I can say one more thing for sure though. If any of you guys followed our the Joe Jobs series that we were running on Patreon, it's open. I mean, you can just go to Patreon to our patreon.com/ideal_comics. Most all of the Joe Jobs pages are still up there for anyone to see. And with that, we are going to be releasing a version of that probably of the whole thing, a print version, probably February, or at least it'll be an e-comic version of the whole thing, probably February, and possibly print as well. Doing print with that one. But that one, it's a whole story featuring Greg from Forces, like 12 years later, grown up and disgruntled and working at a fast food restaurant. And from the chat, we do have one question, and we'll close out with this one if we can do it. What is your favorite single issue of any comic?
That's that's a tough one for me.
Let's expand this because I know you do a lot of webcomics storyline, web storyline account. You can think of a particular storyline.
I'm just gonna
honestly,
go with one in front of me.
So the metal picks his own.
Of course, because I'm egotistical, so I have to.
Very honest. Very honest though.
Well, I'll put it this way: during your unexpected break a little while ago, we discussed a certain issue of Mad Magazine where Super Duper Man was fighting Captain Marbles, and that's probably my favorite. It wasn't an issue per se, but that was groundbreaking for Mad Magazine and EC Comics, because at that time DC sued them for their use of a Superman-like character. And they were a little more litigious at the time. They were suing Fawcett Comics over the likeness of or the similarity of Captain Marvel to Superman,
which almost certainly spurred on that little gag.
Yes, but the court eventually ruled that it was fair use to have a satire for Mad Magazine to use a satirical or to create satire using copyrighted other people's works. It was considered fair use, and that was groundbreaking because now that gave them license to do basically what they've been doing ever since, taking other people's property but making fun of them in slight variations. And I think that was a particularly good thing for comic creators to have that freedom.
Dan, are you still with us? Can you what would you consider your favorite issue or storyline? maybe he's not with us. I don't know. So I have a picture of mine. I'm trying to load up here. I will show you. And it's actually kind of wild. When I'm there it is. There's the Christmas alarm. That tells us it's just about time to wrap the show up. But just a second here. Okay, we are. Nope, that's the wrong window. Where's the right window? We are. Share my screen. Share the screen. Pick a window. Wow. Right there. This issue of Batman 459. This is the first regular Batman issue that I bought. Right? And with it, this was the one where, as you can see from the cover, it's got Batman on it. It's got Zorro on it. It talks about it flashes back to Batman's origin. It's Jim Gordon. This kid in the front here is reading cannot remember the name of the fake comic, but it's a pastiche of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, prepubescent mutant cockroaches, I think was what it was, or something like that. But at the end of it, little spoiler, Jim Gordon has a heart attack. And that's where it ends. Batman has gone through and saved a bunch of people, and it's got this amazing, striking Norm Brayfogle art that is just just phenomenal. It just changed the way I looked at the world. That's how impactful this art was to me when I saw it. And this is the nail in the coffin of my loving comics. I kind of buying Uncle Scrooge comics the year before that, and I'd seen the Green Hornet, which I was a big fan of from my childhood. They now comics were producing that, and I really enjoyed the Green Hornet stuff. But this comic and the way it just hit me, I read it 15 times, the month after I bought it, and I'd read it to and from on the way to church, like every week. It was I loved this book, and that was so, it just hit me so much that this is what cemented my love of comics in a way that nothing else has, and nothing has surpassed it since then. I've read comics that may be more impactful, more meaningful, or more complex, but this was a world-changing book for me. So if I have to pick a single issue, that's going to be the one, man. And everybody ought to go to their mycomicshop.com and see if you can't buy a copy. Also, they treat their customers really well, so so that's mine right there. Okay, well, I guess we'll go ahead and I'm going to see just Matt, Dan, are you with us at all? I don't know. I'm going to have to try to get a hold of him later, I think. Because I don't know what happened there. Something weird with the connection, I think. Or his cell phone died or something. It says he was still connected, but I just cut him off. So thanks guys for coming along, and even though my internet did weird things, it's been a fun conversation. I've enjoyed it heartily, and been talking about comics and webcomics, and everybody's messages are in the chat. Your not messages, your links are down in the description. You can check out X Dynamos Chaos. You can check out at 5. Dan Connor's stuff is on his website as well. You guys are all on Twitter. I also have I put you on Facebook. I even use some people's real names on the Facebook posts, so we would link to them.
That's no problem.
Well, you have your art in your description. I figured you were probably okay.
Yes, yeah. Well, because I have a separate pen name, but That's not because I'm trying to hide my actual name. There's clerical reasons for that.
Yeah, it's a plot point in the greater universe.
Well, part of it, yes, actually, but not intentionally.
So, anyway, we'll go ahead and pull the trigger on this day. Thanks for coming along. For you guys in the chat, next week, although details are not entirely worked out, I'm expecting Dan Sakharov from the Mythoverse to come on, talk about why we love Star Wars and hate it. It is I'm also planning on I cannot believe I've forgotten his name at the minute. Wrote Movie Men. Jeremy Lott is coming on to talk history and politics, actually, possibly not comics. So we got to figure out the middle ground on how we're doing schedule wise. So, and of course, PK, you are always welcome to come in the chat and raise just a little bit of hell. Appreciate that. So, guys, thanks for coming and tuning in, and we will see you all around the interwebs. Keep reading comics.
Right.
Yeah. All right.